In this video, I will share with you several key principles of differentiation and how they apply to gifted children. I love this saying. It says, fair is not everybody getting the same thing. Fair is everybody getting what they need to be successful. This is a saying that I always post on the wall of my classroom on the first day of school and then refer to it often throughout the year. Differentiation is a mindset, and I really feel that this statement really sums it up. If you post this and then talk about it with your students, it kind of helps to make that whole idea of differentiation become a norm in your classroom. Before we discuss the three principles I mentioned earlier, let's take a look at the Gifted Students Bill of Rights created by Dale Seagley and posted on the NAGC website. For those of you who don't know, the NAGC website is a wonderful source. NAGC stands for the National Association for Gifted Children, and the website is nagc.org. Go ahead and take a minute and read through this list and decide which of these 10 ideas refer to a differentiated curriculum. I kind of think that question number 2, 3, 6, and 10 definitely apply to differentiation. Number 2 speaks to the need for rigor and challenge in the classroom. Number 2 says you have a right to learn something new every day. Research shows that many gifted students on the first day of school come knowing up to 50% of the curriculum. Number 3 says you have a right to be passionate about your talent area without apologies. This relates to choice and allowing students to pursue interests of their choosing. Number 6 says you have a right to make mistakes. Also, this refers to challenge and letting students know that it's okay to try something hard and fail the first time. We can't steal the struggle from students. We need to allow them and encourage them to take academic risks. Another sign I usually post in my classroom is, this is a risk-taking, mistake-making classroom. And then number 10. Number 10 says you have a right to not be gifted at everything. This is just a reminder that we must be careful not to expect gifted students to be great at everything, and to make sure that we pre-assess our students before making choices to differentiate or not. We can't rely on a gut feeling or a label. We need data to show that students are ready for differentiation or need it. I also wanted to share with you the NAGC Teacher Knowledge and Skill Standards before we take a look at those principles. You can download these by going to the NAGC website. I've listed the link here on the slide. Here is an example of what those look like. Standard 3 deals with curriculum planning and instruction. 3.1 discusses the fact that gifted students should demonstrate a year's worth of growth like everyone else. This might mean that the teacher has to pull resources from the next grade level, thinking outside the age grade box, in order to accelerate students' learning. But a full year's worth of learning needs to take place. 3.4 talks about enabling the students to be independent investigators. Now, this does not mean that the gifted students are sent to the back of the room to work on their own while the teacher focuses on the other students. Gifted students need quality time with the teacher as well. With all that being said, now let's take a look at the first guiding principle of differentiation. Students should be offered choice and challenge. All humans have 3 basic needs: to feel autonomous, to feel competent, and to feel connected to others. Providing choices and an adequate amount of challenge are essential to students feeling both autonomous or independent and competent in their own abilities. And this also will increase motivation. Intrinsic motivation is evidenced when someone engages in an activity because they want to, not because they have to. There's no better way to promote intrinsic motivation than by allowing students to focus on their own goals and interests. Also remember, students need opportunities to not succeed with ease if they are to develop their talent and potential. You need to create a safe space for experimentation and exploration in your classroom. It's better that students fail at something in your classroom than they do in college, or if they were to fail in the real world. The consequences are much less. All students require and deserve academic challenge. That means even the brightest student in your class, if they have mastered this year's standards, then take them on to the next year's standards. How do you know the correct level of challenge? How do you find that zone of proximal development that Vygotsky talks about? Well, that involves guiding principle number 2, pre-assessment and a perky pace. The most important single factor influencing learning is what the learner already knows. Ascertain this and teach him or her accordingly. Pre-assessment will help you do that. It will help you eliminate unnecessary practice of material that students have already learned. There are many benefits to formative assessment. Research has shown that the consistent use of formative assessment can double the speed at which students learn. Pre-assessment helps you to determine what further instruction or opportunities for mastery students need. In essence, pre-assessment helps students buy back some of their time, which they can use on something meaningful to them, or you can accelerate them on to the next skill. This is what pre-assessing students will allow you to determine. It will help you know what the student already knows about what's being planned. It will help you determine what standards, objectives, concepts, and skills the individual student understands. What further instruction and opportunities for mastery are needed, what requires reteaching or enhancement. What areas of interest and feelings are in the different areas of the study, and how to set up flexible groups. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. Remember that above grade level standards can be used to increase challenge. Just make sure that you have data to show that they have mastered grade level standards first. And this doesn't mean a standardized test or something like that. It could be, well, we're going to look at some examples here in just a second that explain how you can determine this. When it's clear that a gifted student lacks knowledge or skill mastery, then direct instruction is still important. Here's an example of a non-formal way of pre-assessing students. It's called squaring off, and this is where you basically put a sign in each corner of the room. It could say, this corner is the dirt road, the next one is a paved road, the third corner is the highway, and the fourth corner is the yellow brick road. Then you name a skill, let's say multiplying 3-digit by 2-digit fractions. And then you tell the students, walk to the corner of the room that exhibits your understanding, your comfortableness with that skill. And then the students walk to that room, that side of the room, and you can get a global look at your classroom and what they know and what they don't know. Another non-formal way of assessing that's not pencil paper is an exit card. Having the students list 3 things they learned, 2 things that they want to learn more about, and a question that they still have at the end of a class, turning that into you can be powerful, because it will allow you to go back that evening, examine their responses, and determine who needs re-taught what skill, and what questions students are interested in finding out more about. Here's a whole host of other assessment techniques that you can use. You'll notice KWL is on there. I like to use a modified KWL when I'm pre-assessing, and this is where the K stands for what you know, the W stands for where you learned it, and the L stands for what you want to learn. A few other ideas here. My favorite on this list are the quick writes, and this is very simple. You simply ask the students ahead of time, before you teach a skill or a unit, to write down everything they know in the next 5 minutes about this topic. You give them time to write it, you collect their responses, and that evening or over the weekend you read through their responses and examine them in order to determine who has already mastered this or feels, has exhibited enough information to show that they have mastery, who is at the basic level of knowledge, and who's in the middle. This will allow you to form your groups and for tiered assignments and things like that more effectively, because you have data to show what they know. This is a pre-assessment that's perfect for primary grades, and it's called Muddy, Buggy, Clear. And you simply give students these cards, and you name a topic, so let's say the solar system, and if the student feels like they're very confident in what they know about the solar system, then they have no questions, they would hold up the clear card. If they have a few questions, they're a little uncertain, they would hold up the buggy windshield, and if they have no clue or are really struggling, they would hold up the muddy card. Just remember that formal pre-assessment is also a strategy available. This could mean giving the post-test as a pre-test at the beginning before you start. There are usually alternative versions of tests now that are included in the curriculum that many schools purchase. So take a look at what's there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just make sure that if you do pre-assess, you actually use it, you actually analyze that data, or then otherwise you've just wasted your time. The second part of that principle was a perky pace. Anita Archer is known for using this phrase, and it basically means this: teaching at a rate that keeps students' attention and does not linger on any point longer than necessary. That just means, don't drill and kill. If students have mastered it, move on. The last guiding principle is to use flexibility and feedback. Alonzo uses the analogy of driving a car. One might view standards as providing this destination for student learning. However, as drivers, we often are interested in knowing more than "are we there yet?" We would like to know how much further the journey will be, what we might experience along the way, and so on. The average student receives 6 seconds of personal feedback, individual feedback from a teacher each day. Giving immediate feedback is one of the most powerful impacts we can have on student achievement. This is that just-in-time learning piece. This might look like grading something immediately or over the evening instead of letting it sit for a few days. And I know that's hard with our busy schedules. Conferencing, having one-on-one conferences periodically with students, or just simply putting a post-it note on their desk that says, "Hey, great job," or I liked how you did so and so. Another great strategy I've used in the past, it uses pennies. And let's say we're doing a math concept and the students are doing independent practice at their desks. I walk around the room and I have a handful of pennies, and if I see someone who's struggling, I simply place a penny on their desk and keep on walking. I scan the whole room. I have looked at everyone's work and put pennies on the desks of students who need more help. While everyone is working, I would say very nonchalantly, anyone that I placed a penny on your desk, please come back to the back table for me for just a few minutes. You've provided feedback. When they come to you, you can scaffold, you can give another example, you can help them work through the issues that they were having. And then they just integrate back into the group when they're finished. Flexible grouping is a powerful tool. Just make sure your groups are truly flexible and that they change based on the needs of the students and they're not static. This is not tracking. This is making groups based on data. Once you make the groups, then you can choose from tiered assignments, curriculum compacting, independent study contracts, choice menus, and all those other strategies that were mentioned in the chapter that you read. Diane Hecox has created this great chart. It's in her book, Taming the Academically Diverse Classroom, and it shows how differentiating for gifted students might differ from differentiation for their typical peers. For example, all students need this. Apply the state academic standards. For gifted students, you can extend them to the next level. For all students, provide activities which reflect rigor and variety. For gifted students, you can incorporate advanced, in-depth, novel, complex content and processes. For all students, use appropriate pacing. Remember that perky pace? May remediate through acceleration. And gifted students, accelerate as appropriate based on their talent profile, knowing what their gifted area is. Here are a few other ideas and examples that Diane Hecox give. Notice the fourth one down. Provide systematic feedback on learning progress for all students. For gifted students, provide expert feedback on authentic tasks, meaning that you explain to students and use the standard of what an actual expert in the field would use. So if you're studying the solar system, the standard of excellence would be what an astronaut, a real astronaut, might need to know, that kind of thing. And using multiple assessment methods to monitor learning progress, all students. For gifted, use assessment data to identify exceptional learning needs and prescribe academic interventions. Those interventions, again, could be a pull-out program or a self-contained gifted classroom, or just curriculum compacting that unit or that topic. In summary, here are my last words of advice. Here's 4 things that you need to do in your classroom. Do be aware of the characteristics of gifted students. Do recognize that gifted students have different levels of ability. Do conduct informal assessments. And do think outside the age grade box. Don't have gifted students tutor students who are having difficulty learning. Number 1, if they're doing the tutoring, they're not learning anything new themselves. And many times gifted students might know something but not know how they know it or how to explain it to someone else. We, as the teacher, we are the ones who've been to college to learn how to teach, not our students. Don't give students more of the same work if they finish early. Students need different work, not more work. Don't demand perfection from your gifted students. And don't forget that parents can be valuable partners. Just remember, as you begin to implement some of the strategies that you read about in the chapters and were talked about here in this PowerPoint, start small, but make a change and then build from there. Thank you, and if you have any questions about this content, you can email me at the email address on this slide.